question for a start. How long has mankind been harvesting grain? And what was the first?
From the beginning of time, almost.
About 5,000 years.
Yeah.
And with the Egyptians. For about 4,500 years, the grain was taken down by somebody on their hands and knees with a sharp, long knife on the ground. Probably 400 years ago, somebody thought of taking a long pole with a curve in it and putting a big blade on it and standing up to the side. A little later on, they added fingers, little fingers to the back of that side. It's called a basket. And as the grain was cut, you put it in the basket, and now you got a bundle. The whole thing gets down to a bundle. But it still goes on the ground, and somebody's got to pick it up and throw it on the wagon. The threshing part, before there were threshing machines like this and some of the early forerunners, was taking that grain in a wagon, getting it to a place where you got a big blanket or skin, and you dump it all in that skin, and here come the threshers. A bunch of people with sticks, and they beat that heck out of it. Okay, a huge upgrade to that was a 6-foot stick with a loop, and another loop with about a 2.5-foot stick. And you went like this. Wow, that was way better than you. And what are you trying to do? Take one and pass one. I don't know. Yeah, grab one. Everybody grab one. There you go. Okay. So the whole point of this thing, when you are threshing, you are beating the heck out of the plant so that you separate the stalk from the flower. Then you got to separate the grain from the flower head, and then every kernel of grain is wrapped in something called a hull. You're not looking at the oat, you're looking at the oat enfolding. That's called a hull. This machine has devices in it that will separate the flower head from the stem. That's called the threshing cylinder that works against metal concave, steel against steel. Just destroys the plant. But the oats are probably still attached to the flower head. And then it goes through something called the separation cylinder in concave. Now you're down to just this. But that isn't the oat. That's the oat with a tuxedo on. You got to get that clothing off. Okay, I want you to take an oat. Everybody grab one. Put it between the palms of your hand and rub it. If you take one oat and put it between the palms of your hand and rub with both palms, that hull's going to come off. There's actually a device inside this machine that does that. What's happening in this machine is that all of this stuff that becomes waste, the chaff, that's the stalk, the flower head, and the hull, all goes out that end. The grain sifts to the bottom, and it hits an auger, and it takes it across and then up an elevator. And we're not really where we need to be here, but there's a hopper on that elevator, and it's probably set at something like 3 pounds. And the elevator is just a chain with cups. Goes down, picks up a couple of old stuff, don't. There's just a bunch of cups on this chain. And when you get to 3 pounds in that hopper, whoop, it opens up and dumps the grain down the chute and adds 1 to a counter. Now, at the end of the day, and you hired the guy because in 1880, you couldn't afford it yourself. Some rich guy in the neighborhood bought the threshing machine, and he threshed farm after farm after farm. So what would happen is, he'd have that hopper set at maybe 3 pounds, the meter might be tripped 800 times when the day is over. That means he has threshed 2,400 pounds of grain, and you have agreed with him before you started how many cents per pound are you going to pay him to thresh grain. That's how it's calculated. Okay. Now, as the farmer, you don't want chaff coming out in your good grain. Ooh, that's not good. And you don't want your grain coming out of that end because it's lost. So you're looking at that pile and you're looking at what's coming out of the tube. That should be clean and that should have no grain in it. And if you don't like what's happening, you complain to the owner, the operator. There's something wrong here. They can make some adjustments. And pretty soon you come to a meeting of the minds and then get fresh all day. Now, if this was a steam engine, you as the owner better have water and wood. You gotta keep cleaning the steam engine. You better have gallons of lemonade. You gotta have people. This is how it works. When I'm threshing, my neighbor's sons are with my sons working. And when it's their turn, my sons are with them. Because what has to happen? This has to happen. You gotta have people in 4 straw wagons bringing this stuff from the field. All right. At the same time, when you're making your sacks on the other end, because they didn't have gravity boxes back then, there'd be somebody making a 90-pound sack. And when that sack was full, they'd take a twine off their belt. Boom. And they're going to hand it, and somebody better grab it and pull it on a wagon and get it to the grain mill. It takes tons of labor, and you better be ready. And when noon comes, the whole thing stops, and there's a gigantic meal that the wagon prepared. Everybody gets all stocked up and, really, and then you go out for another 5 hours. And you may thresh until dark. So, highly labor intensive, but there's no other way to do it. Now let me go back to taking down the crop. Okay, we talked about a side with fingers, that's a cradle, boom. And we made a bundle, we threw it in the ground, and some put that bundle up and put it on it. And then we had to go to feeding threshing. Okay, the whole business is making bundle tying them. Okay, so go back to your history books. Before we in 1830, and that was amazing. Horse-drawn, a sickle bar mower about 5 feet wide to take the crop down. It lays over in a belt that continuously moves, and it spills out of the ground. Holy crap. That's great. We can do better. 30 years later, Gearing added the binding mechanism. When that grain piled up against the board, they say, okay, that's enough, I'm going to tie. And there's a tire there, and it kicks out a bundle that is actually tied. That's an 1860 technology. That was used to make these bundles. The technology from 1860 was used, now it wasn't horse-drawn, it was tractor-drawn. But it made bundles and it spit them out. Tied bundles. We're talking huge here. So now you go out in the field with your pitchforks and you take those bundles and you make a tent. Like this. 2, 4, 6, 8. With an air valley underneath. That's full of shock. You let the wind blow through that shock for over a month. Just dry. Now, I don't know if you heard the phrase tipping the shocks, but it's time to go get it. And so you take a pitchfork and you tip the shock over to see what kind of snake it is. Whole snake what they do. So now you're taking your pitchforks and you're taking these individual bundles up on the wagon that you see here. So we're talking an 1860 technology that was used in the oat field this week to do this. And the great part is, guys other than me know how to make the binders work, know how to make the threshing machines work, and they've been carried up. I've been in this show 35 years. I really don't know much about the threshing machine other than I got a manual to my own, and I kind of know what it does. But if you asked me to fix a belt, I wouldn't have a clue. If you asked me to make a new belt, I wouldn't have a clue. So, and the guys I worked with 35 years ago, they're all gone. But they passed it down to these guys, the next generations, and thank God we did. Now, these belts, and there's a lot of them, they've got to be cleaned, and those pulleys have to be cleaned. And there's a pulley on this machine that's made out of paper. Paper with shellac. Imagine a process that's rolling paper as it feeds shellac. I don't know if it's 1,000 turns or what. But eventually, you've got a beautiful pulley made out of paper. You know, you can't let this stuff, if it's going to sit outside, you got to have a little bonnet for all of your pulleys. It's really take the belts off and put them away. But the best thing is to have a shed. So you when these grain bundles go in, you'll see they're throwing them in head first. It works better if you go in head first. And don't stack them up, but just have a continuous parade. And you've got sieves inside to allow the grain to percolate down. You'll have a different set of sieves for oats than you would for barley or wheat that you might have to write. So whatever the grain is, it's probably a different sieve. I bought a threshing machine sight unseen. A guy I knew very well who was passed away or operated. He said, "No, it's a good machine." So I'm just a kid. I've never run it. I may run it. I may donate it to this club someday. I don't know. Well, we're all caretakers of our tractors, our threshing machines, our land. We're just caretakers. And this stuff is worth preserving. These old tractors and machines, they're really worth it. So that's what you see at every one of these shows, is this kind of deal. But at every show I ever went to, nobody ever told me what the hell was going on. Right. So I tried to educate myself and do this little talk so we can all kind of get to the same place. What's inside this machine is pretty much what's inside your $500,000 combine is today. It's got the mash set, it's got a pickup, and you got to mash it. So you do have a threshing cylinder and a separation cylinder. Oh, there's something interesting in here. It's called a straw walker. As I said, everything that's bad, the straw, the flower head, and the hull, it's got it over the rear and out. The straw doesn't really do well with fans. It just kind of lays. There's fans inside, really two big powerful fans, pushing things up and up. The straw just kind of sits there. But there's these straw walkers, and it's like a relay. Straw walker, which is 4 or 5 pieces of metal with little notches, will pick up a bundle of straw and hand it to the next one. This is the straw walker. And that's how the straw gets to the other end. You know, somebody thinks this stuff up. No, I can't tell you the combines have straw walkers. There's probably a better way to do that. But that was all the thing that they did. And, John Deere was often not the first to do anything. They bought a threshing machine company, the Wagner Company, in about 1929. So you had Case and all sorts of other people making threshing machines for 50 years before John Deere decided to get into business by buying a company. Same thing with the 3-point hitch. John Deere didn't figure out that the 3-point hitch may be valuable until the 10 series came out in about 1960. All sorts of tractors had 3-point hitches before then. But I'll tell you this, once they decided to do something, nobody did it better. And that's why they're the same company they always were. Everybody else has been bought, moved, they are what they are for a reason. Okay? Questions?
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Yeah.
Just a little while. South Park, right? Yes. On a cock shut, there's a crown. You have one? Okay. Thanks for stopping, guys. Hey. And even though we got 3 manufacturers here, I'm going to go. It's a J.J. McCarthy that was filming like this. And now they're looking for a